Hello. Was I able to end it before anything too terrible happened? I can't hear.
What'd you say, Matt?
Can you hear me?
I don't think we were exposed to anything that
I saw a butt cheek and I hit end. So I don't know if anything else worse happened. Was anything worse? Was it? Yeah. What? Okay. I guess we can talk about it later. Sorry about that. I thought I had the waiting room feature turned on. Evidently, I did not.
It's okay. You read about these things and you hear about them and you always wonder, well, what does that look like? So I guess that's what Zoom bombing looks like. Matt, does that need to be reported to, I know there's like Estacada Watch pays attention to that stuff.
I doubt that person was a local person.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when I hit end the meeting and I tried to remove the person, it asked me if I wanted to report it, and I said yes later. So hopefully there'll be a way to do that.
Yeah.
See, Tamley's jumping back in.
I'm sure you guys have had a minute to just either laugh or be annoyed, but I don't really have time for that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I get that these meetings are supposed to be open to like public comment, but that's disturbing and I'm not going to put up with it. So it's taking up a lot of our time, our precious time, and it's inappropriate. So I hope that doesn't happen again.
Yeah, so I take responsibility there. I normally have the waiting room feature turned on to avoid that, and didn't have that turned on evidently. So yeah, I hope I ended it quickly. I don't know how quickly that ends it for everyone. I hope nothing too graphic was on there, but yeah, apologies.
No, and I agree, Tanley. Obviously, it's a huge waste of our time, especially we are now almost 25 minutes into this one. So
Connie's rejoining, and hopefully Bennett will as well.
I'll just take a minute to also explain my impatience. Luke and I have experienced some vandalism at our business over the past 2 weeks. And it's making work really frustrating and more stressful than it needs to be.
I'm sorry to hear that. Have you involved law enforcement at all or no?
Not at this point. I think if it continues, then we will. Obviously, when that kind of thing happens, it's shocking and you're like, oh, it's a one-off, like we just continue doing our thing. But it's really hard for me to do these meetings and have that going on when you feel like you're being targeted.
Are there any cameras around that you can tap into?
I have cameras on the inside that can capture activity on the outside, but ironically, that night, our cameras went offline.
So you feel that you're being targeted personally?
Our business.
Huh.
Mm-hmm. I mean, one incident was I direct, like, someone stuck a dirty pizza box from Figaro's with a handwritten note on it in the handle of our door, complaining that we don't have garbage and recycling outside for people. And What else? Oh, that we don't own anything, which makes no sense. Something about trying to get people towed out of the parking spots that we lease from our landlord, which we've never done, but we have the right to do if we want to. So
All
I don't.
right.
Oh,
And then also our landscaping was vandalized. People ripped 2 plants out of our landscaping. So, you know.
I'll
I'm
see if I
so
can pop by and talk to you and Luke. I mean, obviously there's probably not much I can do, but I'd like to know more and anyway, let's keep moving.
Can I say something? Tanley, I don't know if you have my telephone number, but give me a call sometime because we've been doing business in this town for 18 years and we've experienced all kinds of things. And so I can share some of my stories and some of the things that we've done to help mitigate some of that stuff.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay, yeah, let's keep going if we can.
So I'm sorry, Bennett, I know the next portion of the programming would be yours in this session or planning session. Are you ready to jump right in? Not to just put you on the spot here again, but
I'm good. So, okay, so a couple of things that I wanted to say before we got going. One, I want to make sure that everybody knows that the process that I use in strategic planning, business planning, is something that I've used for a long time. But what we are doing is marrying it up to the Main Street program. And so I actually spent a bunch of time thinking about how we were going to do that last night. And I have a list of exercises that we're going to do today in putting together this business plan. And I kind of went back and forth as to whether or not we started with the Main Street format and trying to plug things in, or whether or not we would just continue the process that I typically use and then marry it up to the Main Street format. And I decided that we're going to go with the latter. And so, but I just wanted to assure everybody that we will make sure that this plan is consistent with the Main Street format and the 4 different areas of focus that the Main Street programs use. And so there's that.
thank you.
Another thing is drawing from the Main Street program. One of the things that they say in there is that successful, sustained revitalization begins with a series of small actions that taken together can lead to catalytic change. And so remember that what they suggest is no more than 1 or 3 goals for a fiscal year or a year. And that small is good, that small changes add up to really big changes over the long haul. So we're not looking at moving boulders, particularly right now, but with small things that we're putting together, boulders will eventually be moved. So, and one other thing to focus on is that we are an economic development group. And in the end, our goal is to support economic development in a very defined area. And so we did some research on that, and Matt sent us some maps. And I was hoping Matt could do a share screen so we could look at that right now. And one of the maps is in particular the one that had was in red. There you go. So Matt, if you could kind of describe to us, because sometimes on these screens it's a little bit difficult to see, but describe where this very specific area starts and ends.
Sure. So one of the easiest ways to visualize is it's the grid that sits below the ridge. And so when the topography changes, that means you're getting out of the defined downtown area. Mm-hmm. The exception to that would be the southernmost area, which is on the other side of the highway. So this is Highway 224, and the bridge would be coming over the lake/river here. The Cazadero is here. The community center is here. And so that area is in the defined downtown area for which we have oversight, I guess, if you want to use that word. And then this is the old Bennett's Tire building. This would be Les Schwab up here. And this would be the funeral chapel here. And so that kind of hopefully helps you visualize, you know, subway over here.
And I think that's really important because when people talk about the downtown area, they sometimes have a broader vision. This area that we're dealing with does not go up to the school. It doesn't go to the library. It doesn't go to Wade Park. It just is this very limited area. And I think that's important because when we're doing things or planning things, this is the area that we're talking about. And these are the businesses that we're talking about. Matt, do you concur with that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there's nothing to disagree with there.
Okay. So how did that area get defined, Matt? Do you know?
I mean, it's partially a function of land use zoning. So this area in red is also our D downtown zone, which is a land use designation.
Mm-hmm.
It aligns with the urban renewal area. And so it just kind of made sense to define it as such. I mean, it's supposed to be the downtown dense commercial core. And if you're just looking at that, I think everything on there makes logical sense. The only thing that might not is that area south of the highway. But certainly up by the school or by Wade Creek Park, I mean, yeah, that's uptown. It's just different. It's a different animal. Its personality, its characteristics are different. This area shares geographic proximity and just attributes that unify it. I don't know the methodology that was used, but I think people looked at it and saw what makes sense, and this is what made sense.
Okay. Well, and another thing that the Main Street program continues to, or talks about repetitively, is that it's also a historic restoration is part of what they stress. And this would be the more historic side of the town.
Yeah.
So, okay, so the next thing I wanted to do is briefly just review the SWOT. So Matt, if you could put the SWOT up there. Everybody was at the last meeting, so I'm going to zoom through this really quickly. It just helps us to get our, brain juices going a little bit. So some of the strengths that we talked about was the town is growing and filling empty spaces, the strong art community, the migration from urban to rural, and diversity, local pride, I think is a big thing. That Main Street is aesthetically pleasing, or at least the Broadway area is at this point. That there's a variety of businesses and diversity of those, some women-owned businesses. Walkability is definitely increased in downtown, and collaboration between the organizations. Some of the weaknesses that we listed were some people resist change in the area. We don't have commercial lodging, and that's been something that's been focused on for a long time, and we still don't really have it. Limited access to the river, that's something that's been talked about a lot in years past also. We have some bad press. Main Street is off the highway, which I think is, in my own opinion, is a good thing and a bad thing. No city square, lack of space for new businesses. There are still some eyesores in downtown. Businesses are mixed businesses aren't mixed with affordable, or they are mixed with affordable housing. And sometimes those two don't cooperate well together. Very limited parking and lack of an affordable grocery store. Opportunities, better coordination of the residential and business, jobs related to or because of tourism industry, and the Springwater Trail, river access is an opportunity, pedestrian bridge from MacGyver, maybe someday, turn empty buildings into retail spaces and for pop-up businesses, or consider that, maybe a business incubator, more collectibles and antique stores, and a number of other things. Threats that we identified: infrastructure of roads and septic has to be dealt with over the next few years. Political leadership in rogue community groups that do not represent the majority, wildfires. I just listened to Commissioner Schrader talking the other day, and she believes that wildfires are going to be something that we are going to have to deal with ongoing into the future. Businesses not working together and e-commerce. So we don't have to do the DEC SWOT analysis, but I just wanted to go over that. Does anybody have anything that they want to comment on or add to this list, or they think we got it wrong someplace?
I feel like really quick, and I don't know exactly how to say this, but under strengths, the Oregonian just did a really nice article on Estacada and our resilience and how our community, our little community out here has just been beat up left and right this past year. But also like kind of highlighted how our community has like really come together and stayed strong and like stood up for each other. And so I feel like that's something that does deserve to be added under strengths. I don't know exactly how to word it, but something with like community loyalty or something like that.
Well, maybe we just say it just how you did, was that we're resilient, and also that we have the ability to come together under adversity.
Adversity, there you go.
So I don't know who has that. Oh, there. Well, he's putting it in right now. Great. Anybody else have any other things they want to add? Or so the next thing we're going to go to is the draft vision statement. So what I tried to do in writing this, and please consider it a draft, because in the end, the owner of this document is you and not me. So did everybody get a chance to read it?
Yep.
Yeah, good. Okay, so you're all ready to comment on it and say, what I tried to do was, maybe you could make that a little bit bigger, Matt, is comment or capture everything everybody had talked about when we were throwing these ideas up on the wall, and make it so that a good vision statement paints a picture. It gives enough information that you walk away with a picture in your head about what we're going for. So anybody have any comments about it? Did you like it, hate it, thought it was a big waste of time?
One thing that resonated with me about it is the focus on financial prosperity. And I recognize that's what our committee is, a big part of what our committee is focused on. But I also think that when we start dreaming about the future of our town, it's really important to think about social services, and that we have some kind of community action agency, some kind of more organized approach to supporting those who have the most barriers and struggles in our community, because that does impact all of us. And our community will only be as strong as our most struggling community members. So.
Okay, we can put that in there. I think that's a good idea.
I like that, Jenny. I concur, and I think that was a valuable addition.
Thank you.
Anybody, anything else you want to add to it, or anybody want to say what you liked about it or what you didn't like about it?
So the part that kind of stuck out to me was that it said that people rarely needed to go out of town. to get items and things like that because we had almost everything here. And I don't feel like people do stay in town. So I'm not sure how to make that happen, but I didn't feel that people did. Sorry, I don't know what just happened. I don't feel like people do stay in town. And so when I read that, I wasn't like certain that that made the most sense to me.
Well, because this is the vision that we want, and the reason that was in there is that we said in our discussion, we talked about we would have most of what everybody needed in this town. So this again is a vision statement. It's
Okay.
not what really happens now.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure I misunderstood that. So that's my fault.
Well, you got it. And what do you think? Do you agree with that? That we want to have it so that people, have most everything that we need in this town?
Yeah, I would love
Yeah.
that. I'd love to see everybody spending their money right here and not feeling the need to leave.
Yeah.
And that speaks to what I was talking about as well, right? I mean, as far as like people with barriers to, access barriers for getting to things that are not in our town. So having all the things that people need in our town does,
Excellent.
sorry, words are hard right now for me, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, excellent point. I got it. What's something else that you liked about it? Let's start with that. Connie, you always have something. Where are you?
Connie may have had to step out. She was waiting for an important phone call from the state, so she
I
might
see.
not actually be on the call.
Okay, we'll ask her in a minute then.
Yeah.
All right, Tanley, we're going to pick on you then. What do you think?
Oop, there we go. Okay. I actually thought that given what we had discussed, I thought that the way that you pulled together our kind of wish list for Estacada for the downtown, with the wording about how that would be if it was like if we had a magic wand and we can make it be what we wanted to be, wanted it to be. I think that it encompassed most of what we discussed. Seems like it was a long time ago now, so I might be forgetting something, but overall, I thought it was pretty good. It was solid. Yeah.
Good, excellent. How about you, Julie? What do you think? And I think you guys can all unmute unless you've got dogs barking in the background.
I'm just reading over this and I think it's just great. I can't think of anything else that I would want to add to it.
Okay, well then what we'll do is we'll put in the thing about the social services that Jenny
Mhm.
brought up. And if you have any other thoughts, then later on, then just email me. You guys all have my email address. So
This is great, Bennett. Thank you.
thank you, Julie. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and continue with the process now.
Connie's
And
back.
I want you to think of this as a living document, because we may go back after we are down the road with the strategic planning. We'll go back to this vision later on. Oh, go ahead, Kim.
It looks like we've got Connie back with us if we wanted
Okay.
to.
Excellent.
Oh.
Connie, are you there?
And Ben, and I hate to say this in front of everybody, but there is a typo.
Well,
tourism is alive.
That is typical for
Is
me.
Is that a French way of selling alive? Yeah.
Yeah, where is the typo, Connie?
Tourism is alive and well in Estacada.
Oh yeah, I saw that the other day. Yeah, sorry about that.
I think it's
Well,
a very good document. It's kind of long, but it's good.
Okay. All right. So the next thing that we're going to do is talk about guiding principles. Now, we introduced these last time. Guiding principles are things that we consider foundational and unchanging. And a good example of a guiding principle might be the DEC will, to the best of its ability, engage the community in planning and goals. So another guiding principle might be that the work of the DEC is transparent and visible. So these are things that we consider important things to state, but not necessarily, they're not really part of the plan. They're just things that we expect are kind of our values. So, and values don't really change most of the time. So anybody have any idea for some guiding principles? What do you think about the one that I just said about engaging the community?
And that being part of the transparency piece, is that right, Bennett?
Well, I'm trying to spur conversation about what the guiding principles would be. And that was one that I came up with. But yeah, do you think that that should be a guiding principle, that the community is involved in the work that we do?
I'm just curious what that looks like. You know, what does that look like when we are transparent to our community? I mean, you know, during the pandemic, having all of our city meetings recorded like this so that the public can watch them is probably the most transparent the city has ever been. But I fear that we're going to step back from that as we go back to in-person meetings. So I'm not sure how we create that transparency moving forward.
Do you think, Jenny, that transparency is important for us to maintain?
Absolutely.
Okay, so if it's one of our guiding principles, we don't have to answer how we're going to do it, but we are going to do it. So how could it happen? I don't know, a dozen different ways. We could publish something in the newspaper every time we have a meeting and say, hey, this is what we did last time we had a meeting. Or we could continue having these meetings recorded and available. Just because we're in the same room doesn't mean they can't be recorded. Or just, you know, half a dozen different ways we can make the minutes of the meetings public or whatever. But the guiding principle would be that we want it to be transparent, that the work that we do is transparent.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense to me. I understand that. I just have, you know, been on enough committees where we can talk the talk. I just hope that we can actually make it come into fruition somehow. That's all.
And that is precisely the reason for guiding principles. So what do you guys all think? Do you like the transparency thing?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I definitely do. And I think it is really important, like Jenny said, that the community feels like they know what's going on and that there's honesty behind it and that everything is just transparent for everybody to see.
Do you guys like the idea of engaging the community in our work?
Yes.
Totally, yeah. It doesn't make sense for us to be working on our little silo here without asking the community what they actually want. Because our idea for the downtown might be different than what the general rest of the community is. So.
Anything else you guys can think about?
I don't know if this fits in, but just developing a good relationship with the schools, you know, I believe that there are future leaders and, anything from coming down to being able to hire, people, kids from school. I just think that the businesses and the schools, we just need to have a little bit more tighter relationship. And
let me think about that one for a little while.
Yeah.
And because that may fit into a goal or action step more than it does a guiding principle.
Yeah, it
So
would.
let me kick that one around a little bit in my head. Connie?
Nice. And Julie, just want to make a comment. Years ago, the chamber, and I think it was also EDA, tried to work with the high school, their business management group, to get some representation from them. And we found, or the students were just so busy they couldn't make out any time to help us. But I mean, it's a good thought. I hope we can. But the kids were just so busy that they didn't have the time to join us.
Okay, so we're going to move on to something a little bit easier. And that is the first step of our strategic plan is talking about who is our competition. And that may seem a little bit weird because we're a government commission, but the work that we're doing has competition, because partly is competition for resources, competition for money, competition for volunteers, all that kind of stuff. So who can you identify as competition that we may have to, that we have out there? Or things that we're competing for? I named a couple of them.
Well, we're all
Oh.
competing for volunteers. So I think that's a big one.
And who do we compete for
People like you
volunteers?
business owners,
Who else is looking for volunteers in town?
the chamber, summer celebration, any group that does events.
The food bank, Bucknut, the community center, Meals on Wheels.
Yeah, sporting events, coaches. The library.
Mhm. And how about money? Who do we compete with for money?
Neighboring communities.
Pretty much the same organizations.
Say that again, Connie.
Pretty much the same organizations are all putting in for grant money also. The chamber, Philip Foster Farm, summer celebration folks.
Mm-hmm. What other things are we competing for?
I don't know, people's time as well. I don't know that there's anything that directly competes with the events that the DEC does, but I know there's been some overlap with event planning in other organizations. For example, like the Springwater Fair has been going on like the Springwater Grange has their Springwater Fair that's been going on for almost 100 years. And it seems like the last few years they've been competing with like Philip Foster Farm's Apple Squeeze and the library's like Day of the Dead celebration, when people probably only have time to go to one of those events as opposed to all of them.
So event participants.
Yeah.
How about for tourism? Who's our competition for tourism?
Sandy,
Yeah.
Mounted Territory, anybody going up through Sandy.
One thing specifically, like the 4th of July weekend, like the Malala Buckaroo, because I think that goes on the same time that the 4th of July events. Obviously not this year, but years past.
So I was able to get my porta potties from Malala this year because they're not having the Malala Buckaroo.
They're not having what? You're cutting in and out sometimes.
Okay, they're not having the Malala Buckaroo rodeo this year.
No,
Oh.
I don't.
Because usually I can't get porta potties, because they're all used up.
Well, there you go.
Little tidbit of information.
So,
I mean, also our competition is, well, even the Philip Foster Farm, because people will go there and then go no further. You know, they'll turn off and then go to Sandy rather than come into Estacada.
The other place that I know that gets a lot of traffic is McIver Park. People just don't seem to cross that little river right there to come on this side. So there, I know McIver Park gets a huge amount of people.
okay, so that actually is a very good point. Go ahead.
They have a little reader board right as you go into the park. I think we could do better on getting notices and information up on that.
Yeah, so we're actually going to get to is how do we mitigate that? So, okay, with some of these competitors that we have, like other towns, as an example, what do we have that Sandy does not have? What do we have going for us that Sandy doesn't have going for us?
We've got the downtown corridor.
The murals,
Say that again, Connie.
the murals,
Mhm.
the murals,
Murals.
you know, they're for walking groups, that's a big draw.
Mhm.
And Julie, when you say the downtown corridor, what about that specifically? Is it like kind of the walkability of businesses or?
Yeah, where there's just a main, just the main street. I know Sandy, it's kind of weird, I mean yeah, I guess it's just the layout. Our layout is more friendlier, user friendlier than how Sandy is.
It's small locally owned businesses. It's not, you're not bombarded with franchises like you are in Sandy.
Mm-hmm.
Sandy feels like a little piece of Phoenix.
Good point. No franchises. So more hometown feel. So what do we have? Let's see. I'm going to look at some of the other things. Let's talk about like events. What do our events have over some of the other events?
Well, the Timber Festival, when they had it, was pretty unique. You know, it was gone for a long time and then it came back and it really brought in people and we tied it in with a parade and then fireworks. And
Okay.
I think they might have a hard time getting that going again because it's been gone for 2 years.
Yeah.
So,
Hey, that reminds me, is there going to be a summer celebration this year? Does anybody know?
There will be a summer celebration. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. There will be a summer celebration. It's just going to be downsized, and it's going to be more like chalk art on the streets, encouraging people to create, utilizing the sidewalks. I don't know specifically. I know that they have their, I think they have a meeting on the first week of July, but I will try to find out more. But yeah, there will be one, but just downsized to
I
a
was
small
just curious.
scale.
Yeah. Okay. Let me see. All right, we're going to go ahead and move on. So some of the things that we said were we have competition. How can we optimize some of the advantages that we have? Like we said, we had unique events. We have murals and a real walkability, a very defined downtown core. How can we optimize some of that?
I think we could do a better job with marketing it because I don't think a lot of people know about it.
Excellent point. Any other comments?
wondering if we can protect it from more franchises. Is that something, I don't know how that works legally, but I always thought there was some kind of ban on franchises in Estacada growing up here. And for some reason, Taco Time was like the exception or something. And then all of a sudden Subway and TCBY came in, and I don't know, but I lived in Arcata, California for a while too. And they also had a ban on franchises. And I just think that's such a good move for a city because it really does protect it from transitioning into Sandy.
Hmm. Well, I think what Sandy has done is they've required their franchises to follow their building codes. So and I know that Estacada did that because Dollar General is not a franchise. I think it's just a chain. And Dollar General's requirement for what that store looked like versus what other Dollar General stores look like around the United States had to meet very specific requirements, as do a lot of the chains and franchises in Sandy. So whether or not you can actually, I mean, Estacada does have chains and does have franchises, but very limited. And so much that you don't even think of Dollar General as being a chain store, but in fact it is. So maybe that's what one of the things that we put in this is that we want them to conform with the look and feel of Estacada. Any comment on that? Yeah, Tanley.
Yeah. So, I mean, I've done a little bit of research on places like Dollar General and the kind of communities that they like to go into,
Mm-hmm.
and the kind of things that happen to small communities when places like Dollar General come and kind of, like, for example, High School Pharmacy, True Value, some of these smaller, more local places that people have historically gone to in town have, I think, suffered because Dollar General came. I don't think it helps. It hurts. It creates more competition, and I think it hurts the mom and pop shops. So. That's my 2 cents.
So what do you think we should do about that?
I feel like minimum limiting those kinds of businesses, and then also just creating incentives for other people to bring their brick and mortar mom and pop shops to town, and having more. It's hard enough to own a small business, as some of you may know, than to have to compete on a level that you can't actually compete on, because they're getting items like inventory based on massive amounts of volumes, and being able to sell it for pennies on the dollar. And it really does take away from your bottom line. Say, for example, we sell water shoes. Our water shoes are a higher quality water shoe. It's not a water shoe that's going to suit the last one season and then you're going to toss it in the waste bin because they're wearing through on the sole or the seam busted. But then there's the Dollar General that has water shoes for $5. So I understand that maybe that provides ability for some people to get things they may not normally be able to get. So I'm sensitive and understanding of that, but it does create it makes it harder for us to do what we do on some level.
So one other thing that occurs to me is that there's, the more I'm thinking about it, the more I realize that there are lots of franchises and lots of, chains in Estacada, like the yogurt store, I think is a franchise. And and True Value is definitely a franchise. But a lot of those businesses, the differentiation between them and some other ways that franchises or chains are run is their participation in the community. And so like True Value is a, cornerstone of the community. They participate in the community a lot. And the yogurt place joined the Chamber of Commerce, that was the first thing they did, and on and on and on. So maybe what we do is we encourage these businesses, outside businesses, to really engage and be part of the community. I don't know exactly how to say that, but I think that's what you're touching on here.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I mean, I think that should be a requirement of some sort, and not just like the almighty dollar and is making as much money as possible, but like being part of the community, in substantial, intangible ways.
So it sounds like, yeah, and that goes back to maybe what Jenny's original comment was of like kind of policies around these franchises, chain restaurants. It's not necessarily writing a policy that says no chain restaurants. It's defining what we want that to look like and what's the criteria for letting them in or out.
This is going to get us into the weeds, and so I've been trying to debate whether or not to say anything. But from a land use legal perspective, outright banning certain things is tricky, but you can nuance your code in such a way that chains have to space out, for example. The density of them or the distance between them by type or by brand or whatever is something that's possible. So anyway, it's something that can be looked at, but outright banning something that's otherwise legal is tricky to do without just landing yourself in endless litigation from the CVS pharmacies of the world.
Yeah.
Right. I think that's actually what we're all trying to say, is that we create an atmosphere where, owner operator businesses are encouraged, and that code would help to encourage other kinds of businesses to participate in the community and be more a part of the community than they might otherwise think. So, okay, so unless anybody has anything else, we're going to move on. And this next question has two different ways to look at it. So from the point of view of this commission, who are our customers? Who are we trying to serve? So who are the end beneficiaries of the work that we do?
Anyone living in the area code of 97023, but
97022, that's equal to 3.
Okay, so residents of 97023. And I would throw my zip code in there as well, 97022.
Yeah, sorry, Eagle Creek.
Yeah.
I guess our reach of folks from our business perspective is pretty wide. We do get, I'd say like something like 30% residents, 35, 40, something around in there, and the rest are new folks. And we get updates from Square all the time about, because they take area code information. Sorry. So loud. But anyway, yeah, we get a lot of people coming from outside the area. Bedroom communities of Portland, Happy Valley.
So people visiting?
Yeah,
Visiting there. Okay.
Lots of tourists.
Okay. And I would say also the businesses in our designated area, right?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
So that's also, I mean, like define, I guess, because there's people from out of town, the day trippers, I guess, and then would
Yeah.
consider people, do they come
Yeah.
from across the country? So I get
Absolutely.
definitely,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
or more like day trippers would be the focus, I guess. But
Yeah, we get lots of day trippers.
Something we formed some consensus around, I feel like in a previous meeting, was that we're interested in increasing traffic from both residents and visitors, but with a clear prioritization of making downtown for residents first and sort of visitors second.
Yeah.
Might be worth noting in a plan.
Yeah, and I think actually that's a interesting and good point to think about, because if you take the opposite approach, and many places have, where they focus more on the tourism industry and visitors, and the residents are actually secondary, then you have the issue of that your economy being very seasonal. And one of the things that we're all hoping for is that the seasonality of our economy is not so much as that we're actually promoting the economic development with people that are living in the area. When we first opened up our business, one of the reasons that we opened up in Estacada was that the demographic that we were given was that in the school district, which was a 10-mile radius or something like that, there are 50,000 residents. And we thought, wow, 50,000 residents, you should be able to make a business there. Because we did not start out our business with distribution. So our product now goes away from Estacada, but at the time it was actually, we were looking at Estacada as being our major market. And so that 50,000 people, they don't come into Estacada all the time. We talk about that constantly. And so, so the seasonality of Estacada, if we were able to be successful in bringing those people into the town, Estacada wouldn't be such a seasonal economic machine. So it's a good point. Who else are customers? Anybody else? So we've got residents, we've got people visiting, and we have the businesses.
But is it helpful? I feel like when we say residents, I mean, that's just a very, I mean, that covers so many demographics within our area. Is it more helpful to kind of narrow down, like, what type of residents are we trying to cater to, or are we really trying to look good to every single individual living in Estacada, no matter what your
economic? It doesn't hurt to name, I don't think it hurts to name groups, and then we can prioritize those. Certainly, as you know, as a marketer, when you get into marketing, you need to prioritize. So because you need to target or tailor your marketing to that particular market. So what groups did you have in mind, Kim?
Wait, I mean, I'm to say something specifically, but I mean, is it kind of looking at the demographics and the new housing developments? I mean, as far as, you know, opening businesses on Broadway and Main Street, I think those people are going to be the ones that would be spending their money down there. I know there was an article in the Estacada newspaper that I read that stated the median household income for residents in our area. And I was shocked to see, I think it was $50,000 median household income. It might've been 55,000, but I realized I mean, our pocket of lower income families was a lot bigger, I guess, than I understood for my community. So in addition to those like newer, the people in the new developments who are obviously making more than 50,000 a year, to also consider the lower income pocket. But and sorry, my words are not here today. So
yeah, it's that's one of the fun things about Zoom is that it's sometimes it's difficult to communicate over. So
yeah, the feedback's not there. So
yeah. How about job seekers? Do we see ourselves as one of the things is trying to to increase jobs in Estacada so that people are staying local instead of having to leave the area for making money?
I would love to be on one of those people that's offering jobs to people in the community so they don't have to leave. I think just right now it's a little bit difficult because a lot of the people who are shopping are not local in town. So I think if those people started shopping more, then I could offer more jobs.
Also, I guess the other component to that would be our big manufacturing district, warehouse district of expanding that for those job seekers. I mean, I don't know how that applies to the downtown, other than I guess people want to be somewhere where there's an attractive downtown.
Okay, so let me put another little slant on this question. Who is going to benefit from downtown revitalization?
Well, the businesses will, when it's a place that people feel comfortable, look forward to going to, provide a lot of options. Yeah.
Okay. Landlords? Landowners in Estacada will benefit from stronger businesses.
Mm-hmm.
The youth, I think the youth having, good gathering spaces and places for healthy activities.
Good point. Who else will benefit from downtown revitalization?
People who can find jobs downtown, and also obviously the business owners themselves.
I mean, I think this is again where you go back to like residents first. I think the residents are the main beneficiaries, both in the sense that they have a place that a third place, I believe folks are calling it now. You have work, you have home, and then you have a third place where you want to chill. And that's what downtown aspires to be. The other way that residents benefit is that the more downtown densifies and grows up, not only in height, but just fills in, the more activity per acre we have here, the stronger the tax base is. And that means all the bells and whistles that people want in a community, a splash pad, a police department. That's how we afford those things, is by, frankly, developing more in places like downtown where you can get a lot of bang for your buck in terms of tax revenue per acre.
My sense of the new customers that we have that we get daily, who are moving here, they're not people who necessarily are wanting to seek work in our community, but they are people who are figuring out that they can live here because they're working remotely, for the foreseeable future now, or they are retiring out here, or so I think it's along with our growth is going to come more job opportunities, but I think that it's really like our immediate goal should be to just get people to actually, spend their money here, to explore the downtown. And again, I know I kind of keep bringing up this passport thing. And I know Christina said she was working on that. I'm not sure where that's at, but I just think that we have so much potential of just getting people to just like shop in town. People who have lived here forever and just aren't doing that. And so how can we incentivize our local community members, new and old, to just get to know what's in town?
So we're kind of leaking over into my next question from that, and which is great. So who's Chloe Cooper?
That's me. That's my daughter's name.
That's
Oh,
cute.
okay. I'm
Keep on
sorry.
Sorry, because I'm using her account.
Yeah, I just was worried we were being bombed again, so
Oh, no, it's me. Sorry. Okay.
no problem. Uh, so the next question is how are these people going to benefit? And one of the things that I'm going to put on that list is what Matt just said, which is with more tax revenues, then the community benefits by having more amenities like, you know, public swimming pools and that kind of thing. So and certainly one thing that is true of every place is that, well, you know, I used to work in Northeast Portland, and I worked on the corner of Alberta and MLK. And when I first started working there, we had these huge, very thick glass windows, and I replaced those windows a number of times while I was there from gunshots. And also, one of our employees had his car shot when he was leaving work, and on and on and on, right? And so, for whatever reason, this lady, she was the first one. She purchased a building on Alberta Street, and she got it for dirt cheap, and she rehabbed it a little bit and turned it into a restaurant. And she was the first one, and then somebody else did it, and somebody else did it. And then all of a sudden, real estate on Alberta was a hot commodity. I actually sold the building across the street from us at the time for, I think it was $3.5 million. And then the market dropped. But now I'm sure those guys that bought that building think they got a screaming deal. And so now real estate is really hot on Alberta and in that area. And it's you know, so the thing that happens is that when you get an area developing in economically and you get it to be identified as a cool place to do a business or build a business, then more businesses want to come in. Real estate prices go up more and more and more, you know, you don't have any vacancies, all that kind of thing. So I would think that one of the things they have is just an ever increasing opportunity for, you know, more diverse businesses by the simple fact that we create such a wonderful environment for that. What do you think?
I mean, it'd be nice if this, oh, go ahead. I was gonna say, I think it'd be nice if, you know, the city could offer some kind of incentive for businesses that don't currently exist here, right? So if we can think about, you know, and that being one of our goals of having all the things for people so they can have access to things and not leave. So what do we need? Where do we have gaps, you know, and trying to recruit more diverse business owners. And, you know, I mean, we do we have a pet supply? I mean, we have the feed stores, I guess. But, you know, but thinking about what are the needs that we have and how can we incentivize new business owners to help fill that so that people are feeling like they can get all the things here.
So I personally feel like, yes, Jenny, you're right. That would be helpful if they could help us by incentivizing us a little bit. I think a big part of the issue is there's just not a lot of space for new businesses. And I feel like the people who have been willing to fix up their exteriors of their stores and try to like bring a new vibe to the town have done that. And then the rest are not willing. And I don't know how we convince people to be more willing, because there are grants, there are things, but they just don't seem to want to change. So I guess I just don't know what else to do other than to just like fix up my own spot and continue to look for another space to do something fun there, if that makes sense.
So right now what we're talking about, and I'm writing all this stuff down because some of these comments are going to fit in other parts of our planning. But right now what we're talking about is how are these customers that we've identified, or how are people going to how is anybody going to benefit from revitalization of the downtown or continued economic development in the downtown area core? So any more thoughts on that? I would think one of them would be that there's more things to do. Okay, let's go on to the next part. Can you think of anybody that's going to be harmed by downtown revitalization?
I mean, there is some naturally existing affordable housing downtown, and there's risk for displacement of those folks with redevelopment.
And how might we mitigate that?
Yeah, that's the challenge. If urban renewal is involved with a redevelopment project, there's an opportunity to use some of those funds to help basically pay people a sum to get started again in a new location. So there's relocation funds, but absent that, unfortunately, those folks are kind of at the mercy of the free market and the development community.
So maybe another way to mitigate that would be that the city really encourages mixed use. So any new construction is the mixed use, where you have the ground floor is the business, and the second floor is office space, and the third floor is residential. What do you think about that?
Yeah, the code is pretty much already written that way for downtown. But yeah, I mean, it's just I agree 100% with what you're saying. The reality, unfortunately, is just that someone who gets displaced from McRae Motel one day, when it eventually redevelops, either in 2 years or 20 or 200, that person is probably not going to be able to afford the new apartment that gets built above the new mixed-use building.
I feel like there is a reason why that is so affordable, and as it is right now. I don't know if anybody knows about, like, if that building's even up to code for people living in it.
I'm sure it's not.
The other
There's
thing
no
that
way.
Can you think of any other people, groups, or that would be harmed? So by downtown revitalization, we kind of touched on one of them, which is if you bring in Dollar General, then that may harm high school pharmacy. So
the one thing, this may or may not apply, but I know we touched on this, is the parking. You know, like, I know right now the Spiral Gallery is having some issues with the tenants above because there's 2 vehicles that is like permanently parked in front of the gallery all the time. And so that would be discouraging, you know. Is just, you know, it's great that we have mixed use and people live down here, but I really feel that the city or us or someone just really needs to lay out some standards, you know, of how, you know, how people should be living. I guess what I'm just going to say, I'm just really tired of people coming into the buildings and making these makeshift, you know, places for people to live. And it's just not okay. And a perfect example is Blush and Roses. They had an issue with a tenant, you know, that lived behind her, and the walls were so paper thin that she could hear her playing her National Geographic on TV and hear mute, you know, and there was always disputes between the two of them, you know, as far as privacy, and her accusing of her going into her section of the building and things like that. But, you know, I mean, just little things like that, that it just seems like it needs to be taken care of before it gets to be an issue where we can't take care of it because it's already said and done.
I agree with Julie, and I think that in Estacada, historically, parking's been like the wild, wild west. Whoever gets there first, that's fine. But that's not going to be able to be the case much longer. I mean, the town is growing. Mark with Clackamas River Growlers has had to put signs up in his parking lot because people have taken advantage, you know, and that's something he pays for as part of his lease. We've had issues with it, and it's one of the reasons why we moved to the building that we're in now, because we needed more parking. We're having issues with the food cart people because they let their customers park in our spots. So we're about to put signs up too. It's like,
Yeah.
it's just going to be, you know, if you go to Oregon City, for example, you're either looking at paid parking, limited time parking, or reserved parking for specific businesses. And that is where this probably will need to go.
Yeah.
That's an excellent point. Yeah. So just so you can remember when I was telling you about this process, and I said, you know, part of it, you're going to kind of be scratching your head and going, where are we going and how are we going to get there? And I said, there's something that I call the swirl. This is part of the swirl. So some of these things that you're talking about right now, they're going to end up being goals and initiatives that we're going to address. And while we're talking about them, we're kind of feeling out which ones are going to be hitting the fan more quickly than others. And it sounds like a big thing is that parking is going to have to be dealt with, or you have that whole thing of growth limits growth. So you get to the point where you can't grow anymore because you haven't addressed some of the foundational resources that you need to make growth happen. So trust me, we're going to get there on this stuff. It's a little painstaking at this point, but we will get there. So the next part of this, we're just going to do a couple of more sections and then we're going to call it a day. And one of the things that Kim and I talked about today is that we think we're getting very close to being able to meet in person, which will make this process a lot more fun and a lot more productive. And so I'm not going to push us too hard on this, getting too far along today, because I'm hoping that we're going to be able to see that in-person meeting happen sooner than later. But I want to talk a little bit before we go about goals. And I want to tell you a story about a strategic plan that I did one time. And we paid a lot of money to bring in a consultant to facilitate it. And we had this, at the end of the day, we had this gorgeous, very idealistic, lofty strategic plan that looked great on paper. But at the end of the day, it did not address the things that we had to do. So we ended up not achieving any of the goals because we didn't do those first things. And so I just want us to throw out things like the parking that we think are things that we want. We right now at this stage of our discussion that we think would be things that we need to address, or goals that we're going to eventually need to set. And so don't worry about whether or not you think it's a good idea or a bad idea. We'll take care of that later in the process. So I'm going to go ahead and start it off by saying parking needs to be dealt with. So what are some other things, goals that we might have, or things that we want to achieve, issues that we're going to have to address?
I don't know if this fits or if it's too big, but Community Action Agency, pooling all of our resources, our supports into some kind of community center for folks, which, you know, because we're talking about housing and affordable housing and the importance of that. you know, the more we gentrify our downtown, the more low socioeconomic folks are going to suffer. The food bank is going to become less accessible to people when it is right in between a bunch of, you know, expensive retail spaces, you know, so we have to think about making those support systems feel safe to people who need them.
Okay. Got it. So another thing might be and maybe this is already in place, but codes support the vision. City codes support the vision.
Could it be something as simple as like every storefront on Broadway is filled with a business? I didn't realize how many empty spaces there were until I was down there at the Italian bistro the other day and realized, wow, we've had a lot of vacancies. So I was just surprised.
And it's
Oh,
a
yeah.
lot better right now than it was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We had the clothing store.
What are other goals that we are going to need to do?
Is this a good time, Bennett, to put up the economic vitality, design, promotion, organization? Would that prompt some discussion around goals?
I'm sorry, say that again, Matt.
One of the things that you asked me to have at the ready was the description of the 4 different points.
Yeah, not quite yet.
Okay.
So I'm going to put a couple in that I've been thinking about. One is that I think that Kim and I were talking about this today, and we don't know that this has happened, but I'd like to see some meetings with community members, residents, and that sort of thing, to see really kind of extract from them what they'd like to see in the downtown, what they would like to see happen in the downtown. So I don't want to call them focus groups because I hate that word, but I would say some community meetings around what the community wants out of its downtown.
I think that can be really effective, but it can also be really dangerous because of the subjectivity with qualitative studies like that, if you're not actually getting a sample of all of the voices of the community. So if we're handpicking portions of our population for that kind of research, then that can be harmful.
I understand what you're talking about because I've seen that and encountered that a number of times. The last time I walked right straight into it was when the city was doing some of its imaging work, and the unexpected, I can't remember what they all are, which is unfortunate. Anyway, when the city was doing some of its branding work, and they did have a lot of opportunity for community involvement. And but when we actually launched the final product, there was a lot of pushback from the community as to whether or not it was appropriate. And so to what you said, Jenny, is that I don't know that in this community that you necessarily have to handpick anybody. I think you can have open meetings and anybody who's interested can show up. But at the same time, if you don't do that, later on, you walk into the community didn't have any voice in the process. And so you kind of have to face it at one point or another.
But even having an open a meeting like that, there's still so much privilege involved in who can show up. So that's where it becomes very misrepresentative. So and so and I don't know that there's a perfect answer to that, but I think that having seeking information in multiple ways is always a good approach. You know, it's surveys, people can sort of vote from home kind of thing. But taking into consideration all of the barriers of childcare, of transportation, of availability for work schedule and all of that. So I think it's really slippery and easy to accidentally have a very small homogeneous voice when you're doing that kind of stuff.
Why don't I reword my notes on this and just say something like seek information in multiple ways. So engage the community in multiple ways. What other things? I know we've talked about a lot of things. How about incentive programs? Is that something? Yeah.
I feel like we've lost a few people, and I'm wondering, I can never remember if these meetings are an hour and a half or 2 hours. Might be running over our time here.
Oh, I don't know the answer to that. So tell me, because if we need to end now, that's fine.
I would vote for wrapping it up since we have lost a couple people, and I wasn't sure how long it was either, but I need to go soon for sure.
Okay. Yeah, that's fine.
So Bennett, do you feel like you're at a good stopping point for the work that we've done today?
Yeah, I think that's fine. And what I'm going to do is take some of these notes and wrap them up into something that's a little bit more comprehensive or understandable, and give them to you, Kim, and you can distribute. So.
Okay, yeah, great. Because I would like to distribute them to the group. And I feel like we probably, if people can reflect on this a little more, we could probably share more thoughts and additions to the conversation over email. I know I'm feeling a little out of it for some reason after the start of this meeting. I feel like I haven't been mentally here. So I'm sure that's a shared sentiment, and that other folks will have some additional thoughts to contribute to this whole process, maybe in the next few weeks. So if you guys think of things, please share them with me through email so I can relay them to Bennett and Connie. Yeah.
I just want to thank whoever shut down our meeting so quickly when all that happened. Was that you, Matt, that just kind of cut it off?
Yeah.
Or Kim?
I did my best. I'd never experienced that before, so I apologize again. I learned my lesson.
No, I haven't either, but man, you were quick.
What was that?
You were quick on it.
Yeah. So, okay, so with that, again, we're going to, one last thing would be any additional comments from the committee, either related to what we've already discussed or anything that you've just wanted to add in general about our DEC meetings so far. Nothing? All right, great. So our next meeting is scheduled for July 15th. Like Matt's kind of stated in his earlier emails and what Bennett said earlier, is we really hope to be there in person. I understand, especially you guys with the business or running businesses, that you might not all be able to make it in person, but it sounds like we'll have the option of in person with virtual. So let's all just kind of mentally prepare to be there in person if you can for that July 15th meeting. So
that's at 9:30 a.m.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's no, the next board meeting is July 15th at 1:30. But you're right, the promotions commit, not promotions, sorry, the Economic Vitality and Design Committee. That's right. We meet Wednesday at 10 a.m.
Oh.
And I'll send an email out with that information.
All right, well, thank you, everyone. Bennett, thank you again for leading this conversation. And I know it can be difficult through Zoom, so hopefully we can definitely be more free speaking in person. So thank you, everyone, for sharing all your thoughts.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Easy.